All right, I got 11:03, so why don't we kick things off? Uh,
Sure.
Introduce myself real quick. I'm Dan Prue. I'm the general manager with the Greater Vernon Chamber of Commerce, and we're happy to be able to provide these types of webinars for our members and connect our members with our member Rob Rabel to share his expertise and knowledge with you. Um, so a little bit about Rob. He comes to us today to share his world of business acquisition and how he helps business owners successfully transition their business to the next generation by navigating them through the many hurdles of a business sale. So I'd like to introduce you to Rob Raybould. Hopefully that was in my best radio announcer voice. And I'd like to welcome everybody who's joined us today. So we have members from the Greater Vernon Chamber of Commerce, but we also have members from the Kelowna Chamber as well as the Peachland Chamber. So thanks for joining us today. Happy to partner with those chambers of commerce to help share some knowledge with them as well. So I will leave things to Rob to take away, but please, if you have questions along the way, pop those in the chat box, and I will help facilitate those with Rob and have your questions answered as we move through the presentation. So Rob, all yours.
Thank you so much, Dan. Yes, so my name's Rob Raybould and I am with Business Finders Canada. We are a brokerage headquartered out of Kelowna, but mainly Western Canada, and we specialize in business sales and commercial real estate. No residential here. And so I've prepared this webinar to address a bit of an issue that I've really been noticing. Actually, it's been North America wide, and that I'll jump into that issue in the next slide here. But yeah, so I'm here to help businesses transition to the next generation of entrepreneurs, and really the idea is to successfully do this. So let's start off with my slide is not, there we go. A not so fun fact. Locally, only about 13.5% of businesses actually sell that actually try to. So that is over 85% of a fail rate. Now, to back this up, I jumped onto our local MLS to grab some numbers here. So this is 2020. There are 222 businesses that listed for sale in 2020, and only 30 of them sold. This isn't just unique to us. So this is our MLS. So this is Central Okanagan up to the Shuswap. Next year, I'll be able to start including Southern Okanagan stats with this as well. But talking with other business brokers and other websites that specialize in, say, like online business sales, they're looking at about 20% success rate as well. So this is the issue that I want to address. The question now is why? Why is this so low? Unfortunately, the MLS doesn't actually send out a questionnaire to find that out. No, actually, thanks for that, Robert. 2020 isn't much different than of the previous years. COVID did not strongly impact it. Historically, it's been about 14%. So we only dropped 0.5. Talking to the websites like bizbuysell.com, they experienced about 20%. Our brokerage, however, we do boast about over 70% success rate, but this is what we do day in and day out, and we know which businesses are actually able to be sold. So let's go back to the question of why are these not selling? Just based off of my personal experience helping out my buyers, two main reasons. One, prices for these businesses are far out of reasonable expectation, or two, there's nothing to actually be sold. So the business has to be sellable. And seeing that a lot of us here are in the service industries, this will be great. So when it comes to service industries, there needs to be something, some sort of a meat or some sort of an asset to sell along with it. I like to refer to some service companies as like a man in a van. So if the man goes to retire and sell their business, all that's left is a van. What are the barriers of entry? So let's say a painting company. If there are no contracts in place and you're just receiving calls to book out that week, if you go to retire, really, what is stopping anybody else from picking up a paintbrush and a van and going out and selling as well? So the business needs to be sellable, and the expectations of price need to be there. So let's jump in on how to value a business. I'm just going to work around the the method known as the market valuation. This is very similar to selling a house. When you go to sell your house, you go look at comparables in your neighborhood to see and gauge what you should be listing your house for sale. For businesses, it's similar, a little bit different. There aren't enough businesses selling in the neighborhood just to use the neighborhood, so we have to use a larger area. I'll start referencing a few items from the International Business Brokers Association. The name itself tells you international, but a lot of their data comes from North America. So there's about 2 or 3 databases that accountants like to use to help value, and again, based around North America. So let's start with the equation. This is a very basic way to value. There are a couple different ways to go about it. Like I said, this is just market valuation. So purchase price equals cash flow times a multiple. Cash flow, let's start with that. I'm not going to dive too far into this one, but the cash flow is typically a 3 to 5 year average of your bottom line. Later on, again, I'll bring up a stat from IBBA and I'll explain cash flow a little bit differently there. But so 3 to 5 years average. So when we want to change or increase the purchase price, we want that cash flow to be increased. However, when you start averaging several years, you can see how this could take a little while to actually improve that purchase price. So let's take a look at multiple. The industry just calls it a multiple. It is a variable that is used to gauge the risk versus reward. So I want to focus on multiple today because, like I said, cash flow, we can spend an entire hour on that alone. And really that kind of gets, you have to dig down into your unique business to tackle that question itself. So I like to jump on multiples because I have 5 suggestions that you can do today that'll help reduce risk and in turn increase reward. So let's, so here we go. Let's start with multiples. This is the IBBA, International Business Brokers Association. They just released these numbers this month regarding 2020, so that they finally had all the data for Q4. When I said cash flow, it's a bit of a vague term there because here, hey Dan, can you answer? Do you get to see my mouse or? Yeah, you can? Okay, great.
See mouse, yeah, you betcha.
Okay, so so there's 2 different categories here. They broke out these first 3 tiers, and the way that they did it was they used SDE. This stands for seller's discretionary earning. And by definition, SDE is the EBITDA plus the owner's wage. Now there's another acronym. What does EBITDA stand for? EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. For those that aren't accountants in the group, this is an accounting term and figure that is used to gauge the cash flow of a business, because there are so many different industries and so many different ways to run a business. We needed a way to compare apples to apples. So they came up with EBITDA so that if you worked it out for each business, you can actually gauge the cash flow of the business comparable to others. So EBITDA is your basic of cash flow. Seller's discretionary earnings is EBITDA plus the owner's wage. And the reason why they did that is for these smaller businesses. So with a seller's discretionary earnings under $500,000, this is considered a small business. It is actually very impactful how much the owner makes. And we want to account for that in a transaction because the next buyer will be benefiting from that wage as well as the bottom line. So that's, I guess, a quick run through of those 2 acronyms from the accounting world. So here we go. Here's our 2 different segments of these 5 tiers. We have businesses with a seller's discretionary earning under 500,000, between 500,000 and 1 million, between 1 million and 2 million. Let's just work with these 3 for now. As we can see, over the last 4 quarters, it's been pretty darn consistent. We can break this out a little bit more, and we can see that Q2 is when the lockdown happened due to COVID. So we can actually see that business sales were slightly impacted, and that with under $500,000 earnings, it actually dropped 0.2%, or sorry, 0.2 multiple. However, these next two tiers went up slightly. So that kind of reflects that those small businesses weren't as resilient as I guess we'll just go with mid-size for today's webinar here. So these businesses here showed that they were a little bit more resilient to the pandemic and the lockdown, and actually went up slightly in value. And then as things started to dare we say, normalize, it returned back to 2, and these guys kind of came back down to 2.8 and 3. So using this chart, we can see that if your business is netting under 500,000, that the median sell price is 2 times that value. So let's say your business has a bottom line net income of $100,000. You pulled a $50,000 salary equaling $150,000. We multiply that by 2, and the median price would be that it would sell for about $300,000. I want to set this expectation here. And like I said, one of the 2 reasons why I think, this is just what I think, the number of successful sales locally is so low is because some business owners think that they have $1 million business right out of the gate, just because they have a good idea and they've had a successful run with it. And that may be true, but the fact of the matter is we need to put ourselves in the buyer's shoes and consider the rate of return. That's what this is all about. Actually, I want to address that a little bit further. When selling a business, you're in the same space as any other investment. So when a buyer wants to, let's say a buyer has $100,000 that they want to invest. Where are they going to put it? Are they going to put it in the stock market, where they can essentially within 48 hours get that money back plus their earnings? Or are they going to put that $100,000 into a small business locally? You won't be able to cash in within 2 days. And it's just it's a longer process. It's a little bit harder to get your money back. So risk goes up. When risk goes up, the value goes down. So yeah, let's further that. So when you're a buyer, you can also look at these numbers as years of return. So I want to have this paid off in 2 years is essentially what this is saying. So and then up here to 3. Up here at EBITDA, the reason why they use EBITDA is with this larger net income, it's likely going to have management in place, not as dependent on the owner, so the owner's wage isn't as applicable. That's why we have these 2 different tiers, segments with 5 tiers. We can also look at this, if you want, briefly historically. It's been pretty steady at 2 under 500,000. And in and around 3 up at the 1 to 2 million. So I guess the takeaways here are these multiples are pretty darn consistent over the years. There was a slight change over COVID, but they seem to have already returned to where they were previously. And really the median sell price is like 2 to 3 times if we're looking at under 2 million for net income. So I just wanted to kind of set that stage a little bit there. I've seen a couple valuations out there that aren't really backed up by data, and they just automatically slap a 3 to 5 times multiplier on their net income. And that's, like I said, that's where we run into the problem where the buyers would rather go put that money in the stock market and get a higher return or less risk for that same amount. I did a quick look. I just chose one stock. I chose Bank of Montreal. In the last 5 years, that stock has doubled. Not just returned your money, but doubled in the last 5 years. So is a buyer going to be willing to wait 5 years to get just their money back when purchasing your business? Like I said, I like to put myself in the shoes of the buyer. So here are my 5 tips that you can start today, and majority of them are actually free, to start reducing risk and in turn bringing up the reward and the profits. First is financials. Like I said, I'm not going to jump into how to improve your bottom line or your top line. I'm just here to I guess, give you the perspective of the buyer. So when I help buyers look at businesses, we want to make sure that the financials are clean. One part of the process of evaluation is finding the add backs within the financials. These are the one-time expenses or non-reoccurring expenses or profits. It goes both ways within your financials. And so an example of that would be pretty much everybody writes off their vehicle and their cell phone in their business, but is their personal cell phone really applicable to making the money? Are they actually using their personal vehicle for the benefit of the business, or is it just them for their own personal gain? If it's just for your own personal gain, then technically that could be added back. Those are a couple of the most common. Some other things that I've seen are, say, a gas station. I've actually seen a gas station get dinged because, and by dinged I mean they were audited, they were selling marked fuel after hours. Nobody was there, so it wasn't their fault, but after hours the locals would come and grab the marked gas when there wasn't an attendant. It was found out that this was happening, and so then the government then came back to them and fined them for that amount. This obviously hits the financials, but isn't going to be seen going forward because they've corrected it. They've stopped allowing the marked gas to be sold after hours. That's just an example of an add back that we would find sometimes in financials. And more specifically, sole proprietors. It is possible to sell a business that is a sole proprietorship. However, it is extremely hard when it is tied to your personal bank account. So if any sole props come to me, my first recommendation to them would be to get a separate bank account so that we can clean and accurately track the profits and expenses of the business. Something for some of us service folk here. And my resource for this is Wave Accounting. If you're a small business just starting out, this is actually a free online accounting program. You can track receipts and even invoice, all for free. A lot of these resources that I'm going to provide you with are what I use in my business. So I'm going to practice what I preach. Next is online presence. This is your street cred. We want to make sure that you have a website that is updated. If applicable, have an online store. And one of the most important things that almost everybody overlooks are reviews. I imagine, normally I would like to throw this to the audience to see how many people use reviews for their purchases of service or product, and majority usually come back saying that they definitely take into consideration for reviews. That's not just for your customers, that is also for potential buyers. When they do their due diligence, they start looking around to see how I guess, credible you are, like what kind of following you have online. Is it, let's take a salon for an example, because I've actually had this scenario put in front of me. 2 salons for sale. I help the buyer, I bring them both to the buyer, and we start doing due diligence on which one is the better suit for the buyer. And it comes down to, well, this one business has 100 reviews of, it doesn't even have to be five stars, 4.5 stars, 100 reviews of equaling 4.5 stars. This one has 3 reviews of 4.5 stars. The fact that they have a large following and their customers are involved, they actually went for the salon that had more reviews. So not only does it help your customers, it actually helps the future buyers as well. Online stores are, well, we've really been accelerated 5 years into the future with this whole lockdown. Everybody was forced into becoming an online store, and if you're not, you're likely struggling. So my resources here are actually the brand new launch grant that the provincial government has put out. They'll pay up to 75% of your expenses of getting online, or Innovate BC in partnership with, I believe it's Accelerate Okanagan, has the DER 3, which pairs you up with a advisor to help you get online. Highly recommend taking advantage of these. Before those came about, I always recommended folks get a hold of Shopify. This is one of the more economical ways to get online. And Google My Business. This is how you get those reviews. That's specific to Google. Bing has one, and Yelp actually I don't, yeah, Yelp has an app as well, I believe. But so with Google My Business, I recommend to my customers to get the QR code. uh, Google provides it. Get the QR code, stick it next to your till if you're still in person, and ask your customers as they're heading out the door, hey, do you mind snapping a picture of that and sharing your experience with future customers, or hand out business cards with the link to your reviews. After every single transaction, you should be asking them for a review to share with future customers, because this is, again, your street cred, and you need to prove that you are being relevant. Next is data. Data is gold these days. Customer contact information. Majority of businesses selling right now are senior demographic looking to retire, and they, if at all, typically track the customers on recipe cards underneath the desk. This is a start, but very useless. So I usually ask them, again, before the sale, let's digitize that. Let's get that into a CRM. At the very least, let's get it into an Excel document, because this creates email lists. And the next buyer, again, this is ways to improve how buyers view your business. They can simply grab this list of customer contacts that have proven that they need your service or product, and they can start reaching out to them. So this isn't a cold call anymore. This is a warm call, and they can kickstart their profits in their first month of taking over. Massive benefit here. But we do need to be mindful of CASL, which is the Canadian anti-spam legislation. I definitely look it up to find what all the ins and outs are. For the most part, everybody needs to opt in to receive your messages, and they need to be given the option to opt out at any point. My resource for this is HubSpot. Again, another free CRM. This also allows you to organize all of your clients and email them, group email them. You can even categorize them, say, this person bought this service, this one bought that product. Oh, this product's coming up for sale. I'm going to send out an email list, a message to those folk, and build up the sales. So huge benefit and potential here. For number 4, recurring and secured income. This is going to hit home for a lot of us service-based businesses. We need signed contracts. Like I said, it's all about barrier to entry. If we don't have contracts in place, all I need is a van, a paintbrush to become a painter. All I need is, I guess, a lawnmower if I want to go start doing landscaping. Obviously, it's not that simple. I'm not trying to I guess, demote any of these industries, but I'm just trying to get across that if it's easy to get into your industry, then the way to solidify yourself is to get signed contracts. Or subscriptions. Not a lot of folks think of subscriptions. Let's use massage. What if you had an agreement, like if you have a regular customer coming in, why not just offer them a small discount if you already have them signed up for the next every 6 months, every 6 weeks, 8 weeks. If you're a flower shop, go to all the lawyers in town or any of the offices and set up a subscription where every month I bring you a new vase of flowers, just to keep things fresh, right? So try and find a way to get contracts signed, even if it's not for a year, if it's just 3 to 6 months. This is how service companies essentially sell. Subscriptions, again, are golden. I see a Q&A here. I'm just going to jump in.
Here, I'll read that out to you, Rob. So
Sure.
it's, read the CASL. So if the email is collected for the purpose of invoicing, ratings, etc., does that implied permission to contact them via email carry over to the new owner?
Good question. That would actually, I'm not an expert on CASL. I'm familiar with it, but this one I would almost say comes down to whether or not the purchase is an asset purchase or a share purchase. Now, okay, let me go down that rabbit hole for a second. A share purchase is when you purchase all of yeah, exactly. It's still relevant to service. If the buyer purchases a business as a share purchase, they buy the entity that is the shares. That's only if the business is incorporated. Now, if it's a sole proprietorship, you're forced into an asset sale, which just means you buy all the belongings, tangible or intangible, for the business. Let's say landscape business is a sole proprietorship. Then what it would be is you buy all the equipment and the business name. Now, technically, it's a new business that owns it or a new person. So technically, that right would not carry over. This I'm going to leave to. Uh, I want to defer this one to the lawyers, but I'm trying to think of a lawyer that knows Castle in and out well enough to even answer this. But actually, no, there's a board. I forget the name of the entity that regulates Castle. They're the ones that you would want to reach out for this one. Can we follow up with that answer, Dan? I'll get you that acronym of who runs Castle. But if you do a share purchase, you own the shares, the entity that is the business. So if that business has the right to contact that person, the new buyer will inherit that right when they make that purchase. So the answer is depends. And my saying in this industry is there's more depends in my industry than a senior center. So yeah, well, if it's an asset if it's an asset purchase, I would likely say no. If it's share purchase, yes. But I'll direct you towards the body that regulates Castle. But yeah, so let's carry on. Unfortunately, my resources for this would be your lawyer, just to simply help you with some sort of a contract. There are online resources such as Law Depot. However, I can't rightfully say that they have everything worked out. So even if you go to Law Depot, I would say run it past your lawyer to make sure that everything is in good health there. So wherever you can, get subscriptions. Now, number 5, this is probably one of my favorite ones: delegate and diversify. Just checking on time here, halfway, great. All right, so do not depend on the owner. Do not depend on just one customer. Do not depend on just one supplier, and do not depend on one channel. Let me explain all that to you now. Again, let's go back to the man in the van. He's just a painter. So if the business is strictly dependent on the owner, what is the buyer buying? So my recommendation would be to have management put in place, or share the, I guess, the responsibilities. If there's a couple owners and just one owner wants to get out, that's a little bit easier. The number one request that I receive from buyers is, I want a business that doesn't require my time. And the second most requested item would be, it needs to be profitable. Now, all of us business owners, I think you can agree with me when I say that there's no such thing as a business that does not require an owner's time. I'm just saying, don't be dependent on the owner. They can be involved, but if you can get a manager in place or share the responsibilities somehow, make sure that it's or not make sure, but try and work on your employees doing the ordering if you have say like a clothing store. The next thing is, don't be reliant on one type of customer. If that customer ever I'm not saying like one individual, but one type. If that one type decides that they're no longer interested in your product, then we're in trouble. Again, it all comes down to lower the risk so that your reward is higher. The other thing is, don't rely on just one supplier. Yes, you're going to get buddy with one supplier. They're going to provide you with deals, and you're going to develop a really good working relationship. But I would recommend just try and do 1 or 2 orders from another supplier, just to know that you have a backup, just in case that one supplier goes under, your business isn't reliant on it and can still operate. The last one here, one channel. I added this one in more recently because working with online businesses, If you're an online business that is reliant on doing Amazon sales, like your fulfillment through Amazon, and Amazon all of a sudden says that they don't want to carry your product, or even worse, they want to be that person and they want to sell that item on Amazon, you're in trouble. If you're a marketing firm and your claim to fame is that you're on the front page of Google, well, what happens next month when Google readdresses their algorithm and you're no longer on the front page? This is a problem. So don't be dependent on any one item. Try and diversify as much as possible. My recommendation on this one would actually be creating an owner's manual. This is where I would start with writing an owner's manual. Google Sheets is free. Start documenting your daily, weekly, monthly, annual tasks, and then start delegating that to your employees. The tests come when you can give them the manual and you disappear for, let's start with a week vacation. You come back, is the place on fire? No, great, okay. We go for a month vacation. Come back, is the place on fire? No, fantastic. Let's go for 6 months. This is huge, and I've actually had one listing in December that after working on this, they withdrew their business from the market because they were enjoying their business too much. They delegated all of their supply, like ordering of supplies, and they were able to actually become more hands-off. They were enjoying their business all over again and decided not to sell it. So yeah, definitely an owner's manual is great, but again, try and make a few orders from another supplier just to test them out to make sure that they're there if you ever need them, and diversify your customers. Don't have just one silo, have a couple different targeted audiences, and don't be reliant on just Google. So those are my 5 tips on building up your value, because value at the end of the day is what market value at the end of the day is what somebody else is willing to pay. So even though your financials are being averaged out 3 to 5 years, and it takes quite a bit of while to say get over a bad year, you can be doing items like this today that actually, in the eyes of a buyer, really makes it desirable. Like I said, the most requested item that I ever get is make sure that it's financially viable and as little of my time as possible. So that's why delegate and diversify is one of the more important ones, but also keep your financials clean. Like I said, we do some add backs, but if it's to the point where you're running your family groceries through your business, we got a problem. And buyers start to wonder, hey, what number can I believe on this financial sheet? So keep your financials clean, get online, update if you're already online, reviews. I can't stress how important that is, even with your customers, but with buyers. Data is gold. Secure your income with contracts, or get them, create a subscription that creates a recurring income. And actually what you're going to find if you work with these 5 is that this will likely improve your top line and bottom line. And you, like my previous customers there, might just even want to keep your business afterwards. So those are my 5 tips. Maybe one of these days I'll team up with an accountant and we can kind of dive into the cash flow portion of the equation, but that really is specific to your business. These could be applied to essentially everybody. I don't know a business that this couldn't apply to. I use all of these myself. So I want to open up for questions. The real value, I think, of this webinar is specific to your businesses. So if you have a question on how to improve your value, or questions on the process of selling a business, I'm all ears and I can help you out right now. Did you guys want to fill up the Q&A or the chats?
Give a second for some questions to pop through here.
Sure. Did any come to your mind, Dan?
What's the average length of time that it takes to sell a business?
Oh, killer. I can't believe I didn't add that in. So again, off of that IBBA report that was just given to us this month, the average time to sell a business North America wide is just under 9 months. So that's the other thing to consider. If you're looking for a quick exit, they're very far and few between. I have seen a gas station sell within 4 weeks, but it was priced accordingly. So yeah, keep that in mind that you're going to be in it for a long run. I would even say closer to a year to do a sale. So what about rent to own? Like a rent to own for the business? Oh, in our world, we don't call it rent to own. We call it vendor take back or earn out. So they are around, and actually that stat came too. I should have almost just gone page by page by this report. Businesses under 500,000 in net earnings, only about 2% have earnouts. I'm just going off the top of my head, and I believe only 11% have seller financing. So how that works is for seller financing, also known as vendor takeback, a portion of the purchase price would be carried by the seller. This is just like getting a loan from a bank, but it's a loan from the seller. You come up with the amount, you come up with the time frame, you come up with the interest rate. So this is one way for a seller to I guess, again, the number one reason for a business to sell is retirement. So if you're looking for a little bit more of a steady cash injection to your retirement, this is one way to go about it. Like I said, you kind of take the position of a bank where you receive monthly payments from the new buyer. There's a lot of ways to structure that, but that's kind of it in a nutshell. When it comes to earnouts, what you can say is a certain amount of money will be paid dependent on performance of the business. Does that make sense? So I'll pay you 75% of your asking price right now. Then the next 25 will come to you over the next year as the business progresses. So they do exist, but as I mentioned there, only 2% of businesses under 500,000 have earnouts, and only 11% have sellers financing. So very few, over 83% are cash purchases. I'm just trying to.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, another few great questions coming through here. So Mark asks, so would the value not be cash flow plus assets as well?
Haha, there's another depends. I didn't bring that in. I was trying to stay high level, bird's eye view on this. It can be, but it all depends on what assets we're talking about. If say the business owns the real estate, yes, it would be assets plus cash flow times multiple. However, if you're let's use what's something recent. Sorry, just drawing a blank. Okay, so landscaping. The landscaping business doesn't exist without the equipment. So for that scenario, the equipment price is typically included. Again, typically, every business is unique, and this is why valuations are so important, is that we actually address your current scenario. Typically, equipment of a landscaping business would be included. However, if it owned property, that would be additional. So the line is drawn. If the business depends on that equipment, it's usually included. If it's not dependent on the assets like real estate, it's usually in addition.
Yep. Roxanne's got a really good question here. She says, looking long term, how far in advance should a business owner prepare their business for sale? And how far in advance should a business list prior to when they want to exit?
Fantastic question. So like I said, when it comes to valuing the business, we look at the last 3 to 5 years of your cash flow. So again, I've also had businesses that withdrew because they think they want to wait out the recession and the pandemic. However, I had to explain to them that you're going to have to wait this recession out 3 to 5 years, because even next year, as much of a stinker as 2020 was, it still has to be included because it did happen. So if your bottom line is down from 2020 because of the closures and everything, there is, when you work with brokers, I like to explain to buyers that this isn't going to be a bargain hunt where I'm not here to help you just pick up all the I guess broken businesses. That's not what we're about. We're just here to help the succession of businesses. So I'm here to help them understand that yes, there was a bad year, but historically, this is why we average 3 to 5 years. It's been good, and we expect it to be back in place within a year to two to that same standards. So when you're looking to sell a business, expect a solid year. Like I said, the average is 9 months, but expect a solid year of it being listed. During this time, you still have to be very involved and building your business at that time. So yeah, anticipate a year to sell the business, and know that we had to look at the last 3 to 5 years of financials. So if you have 5 years in you, great, you can wait it out. If you're still thinking, I'll sell in 3 years, just know that 2020 will still likely be considered in those financials.
Okay, thanks, Rob. So a question from Robert again. So what is the current market from international buyers?
Oh my, okay. So we receive a lot of inquiries from for immigration. A lot of calls from China, India. I'm helping a gentleman from Great Britain right now trying to move to the Valley. I don't have the stat actually. That wasn't included in IBBA, but I can tell you that it is a very lengthy and tough process. So usually they use the BCPMP program for they get credits to move to a location dependent on location and business and themselves. Success rate is pretty low with my experience, simply just because there's so many moving parts. It does happen. It is a good program. Immigration, that's a good way to go through immigration, but it's tough. Unfortunately, I don't have the actual stats on success rate.
Thanks, Rob. Peter asks, how do you protect yourself against the buyer running your business into the ground when you carry back?
Ways to do that with vendor financing, that's really tough. What you can do, usually with a vendor finance, you hand the whole business over. There's also ways to like remain, if it's incorporated, you could remain a partial owner, where you keep some of the shares and you actually have a vote as to what happens. That's one way to do it. There's also in the contract, you can put floors and ceilings, as in, let's get an example here where, okay, so there's going to be a vendor financing, but you must put in a minimum of amount of time, minimum of marketing budget, minimum of, or a minimum of a certain amount of the financing will be due no matter what. So even if the business fails, they're still needing to pay you back, say like a personal guarantee. Ceilings are the opposite. If you're a buyer, you don't want to pay any more than X amount if the business overperforms. Was that a good answer there, Dan? Did that make sense to you?
I think makes sense. We'll
I may have rambled on that one a little bit.
Scott asks, so what's the best way to build goodwill? So for example, is the Better Business Bureau an effective component? Dynamic Facebook presence also is goodwill an important element for small business resale?
So the goodwill is tied into that multiple. So like I said, when you reduce the risk, the multiple goes up, and that is what your bottom line gets multiplied by. So exactly that. You need to, by proving that you have an online presence, that you have a reliable customer base, that you have intangible assets such as data lists, all of this goes back to the buyer and reduces their risk and brings up your reward.
Peter's asking for contact details for the BC Launch grant you were mentioning. I'm not sure if you know those off the bat, Rob, but I can certainly forward that on to Peter.
I don't know that off bat. If you can, I just know that if you Google BC Launch, it's the first thing that comes up. Right. However, I did talk to a previous client of mine yesterday, and she said that they're backlogged, and she's still waiting to hear back if she's been approved or not. Several weeks.
Okay, thanks. Peter will make sure we'll get that information sent over to you. Robert asks, what do you charge? What's your fee structure?
Okay, another depends. Okay, so for business brokers, we are I am a licensed real estate agent, so we work very much the same. It is a performance-based commission at the end upon successful sale. What you'll find is it's a bit of a sliding scale. If it's just a business that has a lease, our going commission is 10% of the business sale, not including inventory, because inventory is a value that typically changes every day. Orders come in, product gets sold. So it's just the business sale. And that moves downwards to a more familiar real estate's commission of about 5% when real estate is involved, because 10% is just a little too much, or it's just not realistic when you're working with real estate and it's a larger value on the table. So it's a sliding scale, anywhere from 5 to 10%, and it's all performance-based, not due until a successful sale comes about.
Excellent. I don't see any more questions coming through. Maybe we have one more minute in case somebody else has a question they thought of. Or
okay, well, while that last question comes in, I wanted to send a thank you out to everybody who has attended. I'm super excited to see the interest here. And also wanted to send out a big thank you to the Greater Vernon Chamber of Commerce and Dan and Richard there. Oh, I went backwards.
Well, thank you, Rob. Yeah, we really value your time today and being able to share your knowledge and expertise with our members. It's great to have you on board. I guess if anybody does have further questions, now they know how to contact you and get in touch. And yeah, thank you everybody for joining us today. We appreciate your membership, and we'll sign off.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to me over social media. Stop by YouTube. I'm going to be adding this video up once Dan shares it with me. But I do have a couple of videos there that go into a little bit more detail, actually, of a couple of these questions that came through today. So yeah, feel free to stop by any of my social media. I'm very easy to get a hold of. Just